Hi, I'm Janice Tian. This is the Edge TV. I'm here today at the Appenhuang Capital Conference in Kuala Lumpur. Here with me is Martin Adams. He is the energy editor for the Economist Intelligence Unit. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the oil and gas sector. Welcome, Martin. So the burning question in everyone's mind is the way crude oil has been falling since August. So what is your forecast for this year in the medium term?
Seen is a sort of big adjustment of market expectations in the last 6 months or so. And that's partly to do with supply and demand as well. To a significant degree it is. And I think what we're going to see is shale oil drillers in the US, which have been behind this surge of new production, them coming under greater stress in the coming months. So our core scenario is that they will start to cut back on production. The Saudis too perhaps will make some incremental cuts. And that, together with demand for oil picking up, should should help prices continue to rise. As you've seen, they already are. They're at, $58-ish overnight. This year we expect to average around $54, $55 for a barrel of Brent. And by the end of the year, it should be edging up towards 70. That's our forecast anyway.
So you talk about the shale producers in the US and the OPEC as well, and it's looking quite like a battle of wills. And how do you think this is going to pan out in the medium term, and what does it mean for shale producers as well as global energy supply?
Right. Yes, a battle of wills indeed. I mean, Saudi Arabia doesn't want to cut, they want to retain market share. Shale oil drillers, there are hundreds if not thousands of companies that are going to be coming under pressure. So we expect that production is going to slip around the middle of the year. Already you've got rig counts in the US dropping, less permits are being given for shale oil development. So that's going to start telling, and the Saudis too may cut back a little bit. Still, I think overall the production outlook is still fairly buoyant with a wobble in the middle of the year. I don't think we need to worry about shortages of oil anytime soon. So
do you expect the OPEC to cut back? You know, they're going to have a meeting in June, sometime in June. What do you expect from that?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, it may be that what happens is we get unofficial cuts. As you know, notoriously OPEC countries don't stick to their quotas, and so it's quite possible that we'll see Saudi Arabia taking the lead and just incrementally cutting back. I mean, you're right to highlight that meeting. I think Saudi Arabia will come under pressure again from the likes of Nigeria and Venezuela, who are really suffering right now with the slip in oil prices.
So how will present prices change the landscape for producers?
Right. Well, I mean, some of the countries that I've mentioned already, like Venezuela and Nigeria, are really suffering. Oil is a big part of their government take, and you know, in both the risks have increased, particularly Venezuela, where we think a deep recession is on the cards. For others in the Middle East, it's less of an issue for the UAE and Kuwait, and for Saudi Arabia, but even so, it can't keep up the public spending that it's taken on, the sort of disbursement of goodies in order to keep the populace on side at current prices. And that's why we think that it will eventually have to make some incremental cuts.
So you mentioned Venezuela. Like Venezuela and also countries like Malaysia, oil revenue is a big part of our budget. So how do you think these countries will fare in the present price environment?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think you have to look at the economy as a whole, and some of these countries are more dependent on oil than the others. I mean, one of the reasons why we're not as pessimistic about, say, Nigeria as we are about Venezuela or some of the other countries is Nigeria and perhaps the UAE, things are a little bit less worrying for us than some of the others, is because of the non-oil economy which has come through. And so I think you have to look at that element. Also, when you're looking at Malaysia, you should consider the non-oil element of the economy as a cushion.
The market has shown concern over project and contract flows going forward. What is your take on this?
Well, I mean, we've already seen companies cutting back on some big projects, like, for instance, exploration in the Arctic, which is a longer run thing. And we think that some of the more expensive projects like in the Canadian tar sands, for instance, are also going to suffer. That said, as I mentioned earlier, we do think that overall the outlook for production remains reasonably comfortable. Of course, the oil price being where it is a constraint, of course it is, but also companies have made long-term investments, and so in some cases they'll be following through on those, even though prices aren't up to where they would really want them to be in the long run.
What can we learn from the last 6 months, and who's going to come out of this the winners?
If you think of the big players, the top 3 producers, US, Saudi Arabia and Russia, well, Russia's under the cosh with sanctions as well as the oil price. Saudi Arabia and broader OPEC OPEC is somewhat fractious. Saudi Arabia has been reluctant to really use its swing producer status. The US is going to be in trouble, as I've mentioned. That is to say, shale oil drilling there is going to have some big kinks in the road. But we do think that over the longer term, they're going to increase their market power. And one of the things that we've learnt from what's happened this year is that in fact shale oil drillers are looking more resilient overall than we'd expected.
Thank you, Martin. That was Martin Adams. He is the Energies Editor for the Economist Intelligence Unit. I'm Janice Tian. Thank you for watching The Edge TV.